one. Oh, boy. Sarah Spade, Kevin Blackistone, Bob Ryan. Exactly how impressive is the all-time yardage mark? And what it tells young boys and girls. Also, exactly how much truth there is to Severino didn't know what time the game started and what that half brought. And exactly how we can get I don't want to be here by to be the all-time slogan for all preseason games. Let's go around the horn.
It's Around the Horn, the show of competitive banter. Here's Tony Reale.
Three, wide open, and Smith, what a way to do it!
Hey, you're going to accomplish anything in life you're willing to work for, right? I love you, boys. I love you.
We were talking about Drew Brees before the show today, and Woody Page said he's one of the 6 guys on Mount Rushmore. There's only 4 on Mount Rushmore, Woody. That's the whole point of Mount Rushmore. Passing Peyton, 72,103 yards is where he landed after the game. That's the new record. Where will he end up when all is said and done? How impressive is the all-time yardage mark, and what does it do to the all-timiness of Drew Brees? Woody, you want to start us off?
Yes, I know how many people are on the Mount Rushmore. I've been there. I'm the only one probably here that's ever seen it, but I'm going to create a new one in the other Dakota called Mount Passmore, and he would certainly be on that list with Favre and Brady and Manning and Drew Brees. But in regard to the 4 best quarterbacks of all time, no, I can't give him that. I would have to go with Brady, number 1. I think that accomplishments and having won 1 Super Bowl is a great achievement, but you got to win more than that. That's why I would put Brady, Montana, Terry Bradshaw, and John Elway up on my Mount Rushmore if you want to go there. But let's go back, and people forget that the quarterback who owned that passing yard record for the longest period of time was Slinging Sammy Baugh, who had it for 16 years. Manning had it for 1,000 days. Brees can have an opportunity to have it for years because he told us in 2014 and again this year that he's going to play until he's 45. He has a chance to go for 100,000 passing yards now.
Is there anything left to say after all that? That's why we love Woody Page and Plasma One. Is there anything left on that bone, Sarah Spain? Please, go ahead.
Yes, there is, and that's what stands out to me here is, as you mentioned, there is this belief that the game is changing enough that these records can be replaced faster. But if he gets to 80,000, let's not even go the 100,000 that Woody said. If he gets to 80,000, you need 16 5,000-yard seasons to get to 80,000. There have only been 4 non-Drew Brees 5,000-yard seasons. So there are plenty of guys that look great now, but you got to stay great, and that's what he's been doing in the later years. In his 30s, he's been able to keep the pace up. And I think sometimes we forget about him because of those accomplishments, right? He's not making 5 Super Bowls. He's not winning 4 Super Bowls. There's still time to get another one, and I think it all matters what metrics you want to use. He absolutely is on the 6-man Mount Passmore.
All right, how about you, Blackstone?
Well, in this era of the past, it's hard to argue that anyone's been greater than Drew Brees by a lot of measurements. He's been in New Orleans now 13 seasons, and if you look at those 13 seasons, in each one of those seasons except for one, he has led the National Football League in some statistic of passing. And most impressively, the last couple of years, he's led it in accuracy, right, in percentage in completion percentage. So this guy has been getting better as you throw the ball more and more. And last night, although the opposition really didn't show up to do anything but what the rest of us did, and that was watch his greatness, the opposition has had to play against this guy, and he still continues to beat them. So he's definitely on my Mount Rushmore.
And Bob Ryan.
Not on Rushmore because it only has 4, but very, very, very close. Now, this whole thing, to me, is not a revelation. It's a validation. I'm happy he's got the record to put his name in the discussion for people who had kind of forgotten about how great he's been and how long he has been great, as my friends are here pointing out. This guy is an all-time great quarterback, no question. So whether he's number 5, 6, 7, there's always debatable this stuff anyway. He's up there. He's among the elite. He's one of the all-time greats. And I'm happy for him, and I love the way he did it. He didn't do it on a 1-yard touchdown pass. He didn't do it on a little handoff 5-yarder, and someone took it 65 yards. He flung it. He aired it out in a fashion that befits that of a great quarterback, and I'm happy the way he did it.
Sarah, you mentioned something I want to touch upon here. You said he's got that one Super Bowl, maybe more. Well, the Saints were a team people were picking for the Super Bowl going into this year. They started 0-1, and then they barely beat Cleveland. But are they back to being who you thought they were and a Super Bowl contender?
I hate to remind everyone, but when you were asking us our Super Bowl predictions at the beginning of the season, I was someone who said I thought that this was one the Saints would get back in. Then they laid an egg to start the season, and I quickly buried that prediction under my own.
Oh, okay.
But that was only until I could find a way to see if they would come back. And they seem to have done so, piling up the W since. Now, there are very few teams in the NFL right now that I feel certain enough to say that I know for sure that they are a contender to win it all. The Saints are not yet there because there's a little bit too much up and down and not looking great against teams that aren't that good, but they certainly are in the conversation.
Bob Ryan?
They're clearly in the discussion. Right now, I think we would all agree the Rams would be the team that if they were going to nominate someone to play in the Super Bowl for the NFC, it would be the Rams, who, by the way, they will play in 3 weeks. They've got 2 games in between. They have Baltimore, and they got Minnesota. Then they have the Rams. That's a game you want to circle on your calendar. We'll know a lot more about them. But definitely in a year in which we all agree, I think the NFC isn't so great, they got a shot.
One scoring adjustment I want to make, just like there are words that are banned here on Around the Horn, because you've already rendered them neutered, optics, narrative, elite. I think in the conversation now, as Richard's in that equation, we're having the conversation, Sarah. Of course they're in the conversation. Real quick, you're in Washington, KB. The NFC East leading Washington football team still, even after last night. How hard is that to believe? And Josh Norman, let's talk about Josh Norman. He was benched at half. And then after the game, of course, he was still Josh Normaning after the game. This is all about his matchup with Michael Thomas. Is that making things better or worse for him and for this team, KB?
I think it makes things worse for him and for the team. I mean, you're talking about a guy who likes to get in people's faces after a play or before a play or during the off week. Why not get in the face of a guy during the game and cover them? I mean, that's one of the reasons he got benched last week or last night. And the other thing about it is that here's a guy who's not what you thought he was when he came here. Here's a guy who Pro Football Focus ranked right now as or rated as with 63% number, which is just slightly better than average for a cornerback in this league. So
you think a slightly better than league average cornerback can't be talking as much as he is? Sarah Spain, something you want to add?
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, the problem with talking as much as he used to is that you have to back it up when you're in a position like he is, because we can look at the one-on-one numbers, we can look at the numbers when they go to his side of the field, and if they aren't good anymore, you can't keep talking like they are. And unfortunately, if he had just said, that guy was all right, I think he had a decent game, I'm going to head out now, thanks so much for the interview, we probably wouldn't have started digging on his stats for last night or the rest of the season. And unfortunately, they're not very good for Josh Norman anymore. So continuing the conversation on Twitter only makes us start looking into whether he's holding up his side of the bargain, and he hasn't.
What's the stat on the passer rating? Opposing passers against him and in certain 156.3. Yeah. That's 2 points below perfect passer rating when throwing the ball at Josh Norman at times. Unbelievable. We've been horned. We have to move on and talk about the baseball game from last night. Look at Bob just chomping at the bit here. You look like you swallowed a canary. Sox 16, Yankees 1. We'll get to the embarrassment in the blowout and the REM cycle of this guy and the Brock Holt cycle as well. But first, the Severino snafu. Yankees maintain nothing was out of the ordinary. He knew when first pitch was. He was not in any way rushed in his pregame warm-up. But maybe every other piece of evidence seems to suggest the opposite, that he didn't know exactly when first pitch was. Bob, who and what do you believe?
I believe that there's a lot of CYA going on in the Yankees. I think it's pretty evident that he messed up. And it was evident from the first pitch that Mookie Betts hit 406 foot to a 408-foot fence. Would have been a home run in many ballparks, as would the ball that Bogarts hit the same inning. He was out of sorts from the beginning. Clearly, something was amiss. And if it's true that that as has been alleged that at 7:32 he was starting to get loose, no, I'm sorry. This is unacceptable behavior. It isn't the only reason they lost, but it sure as hell didn't help.
CYA is cover your appendix? Is that what it is? Okay, good. Kevin Blackistone, how about you?
You know what? I think we saw Severino have a not-too-good start in a very important game not too long ago when he got snatched in the first inning, right, of the wild card playoff game. So this is not the first time we've seen this. And let's just give credit to the Red Sox offense. All those guys can swing the bat. All those guys can get on base. All those guys can put a lot of pressure on the opposing pitcher no matter what time that pitcher
It's almost like they won 108 games this year or something like that. Okay, how about you, Sarah Spain?
Yeah, I want to say that there's a lot of compelling evidence for this conspiracy theory to prove true, but I also want to say that Severino seemed genuinely surprised when asked about his warm-up after the game, as if there was anything amiss. And one fan did go out and find a previous start that he had time-stamped photos of where he had about the same amount of time as he did last night, and that was a totally normal start. I kind of want to give guys the benefit of the doubt when they say everything was okay, and I understand that Bob is absolutely right. 2 of those shots in the first, if they had gone in any other ballpark, we would have said this is the evidence we needed. But he held it together until 3 or 4, and that's where it started to implode, so it might have just been a bad start.
Well, let me ask you this then, and we'll look at Woody for this. Is this all on Aaron Boone then? Severino starting on shorter rest, starting potentially at the wrong time, back out for the 4th inning, and then how that played out and how he played the bullpen after that, Woody?
It's your most critical game of the season, and you're letting him go past the point because you think he's going to face 7, 8, and 9 in a lineup that's got 7 and 8 at least, and you really want to roll him back out there again. Forget about what happened before the game. It's more pronounced because this is a playoff game, and you got 2 jobs: show up on time and throw at least 5 or 6 innings. He couldn't do either one of them. So in regard to Boone, yeah, Daniel Boone wouldn't have made these kind of decisions that he made. You've got to go right to your bullpen. Those effective guys, you got 3 guys there that can put out the fire. You bring in a guy that's been a starter his entire career. He's not used to coming into the game in that kind of situation. Lynn, it was not the right move.
Bob Ryan, you have a view of that?
Well, I would echo that. I give full credit to Mark Teixeira this morning on radio and saying that the point is they have a 2-tier bullpen. We all know that. They got some decent guys, and they got the elite guys, 4 closers. You got to go to one of those guys. Green, most notably, should have been the guy to come in, certainly rather than Lynn.
What do you think a 16-1 game does in what is now, if the Yankees are hoping it's a best-of-2 series, but and with Sabathia and Porcello on the mound tonight in a do-or-die game, what does 16 versus 1 mean? Sarah Spain, can you answer that?
Well, in baseball, more than any sport, I'd like to say the games are not super connected because whenever a new pitcher comes out, it seems to change the entirety of how a series looks. That being said, the amount of pitchers that were needed for yesterday's game and maybe the amount of frustration or the pressure on Boone because of the criticisms, I'll point out those 7, 8, 9 hitters are 7 of 13 last night. So if you thought that was going to be the easy way out for your pitcher who is struggling, maybe reconsider that tonight. I think the Red Sox get it done in part because of those tiny things that carry
So you're picking Boston tonight. Bob Ryan, any thoughts on what 16-1 is and a pick?
Well, this momentum is a starting pitcher. That's what everyone knows that about baseball. So it doesn't matter if it's 16-1, 6-1, or 2-1. That's a fact. And as far as the game's concerned, the Yankees, I doubt very much, have gone 2 games in a row at home without a home run. I suspect the Yankees are going to bounce
back. Taking the Red Sox.
Page.
Bob, if it's based on today's pitchers, Sabathia has pitched 7 2/3 innings in his last 2 games, so I don't put him in space of them. Give me the Red Sox.
One of those he was ejected on, but you're right, he hasn't been an innings eater all year. He's going about 5. But that's kind of how this Yankees team is built anyway with the bullpen. -1 game yesterday where they were overworked. We're taking a break. Virus cells on the other side. CYA.
Around the Horn is brought to you by Goosebumps 2, Haunted Halloween. Only in theaters October 12th.
This Thursday.